Hello and welcome to my channel. Today is Tuesday, which means it's time for True Crime Tales. As always, content warning, we get graphic, we talk about some crazy shit. You know, graphic crime scenes, etc. So, with that being said, let's just jump into it. It's not a very long one today, so Glen Edward Rogers was an American convicted serial killer. He was also convicted of related crimes in Florida and California, such as armed robbery, grand theft auto, and arson. Always arson. Also known as the cross-country killer or the Casanova killer. He was convicted of the first-degree murder at two separate trials in the deaths of two women, the first in Florida in 1997 and the second in California in June of 99. He's a suspect in numerous other murders throughout the United States after a crime spree that began on September 28, 1995, with Rogers' first authoritatively established murder, but he was featured on the FBI 10 Most Wanted Fugitives list. And from what I understand, like, it has to be pretty bad for you to, like, get on that list. Like, they have to be, like, really, really wanting you for you to make it to that list, because, like, there's so much worse stuff that could get you on that list. He was sentenced to death in both Florida and California for his crimes. He was incarcerated for almost 30 years on death row at Union Correctional Institution in Rayford, Florida, and he was executed on May 15, 2025 at the Florida State Prison. Rogers is born and raised in Hamilton, Ohio, which is where I'm from. Isn't that crazy? I love how people are like, oh, that sounds like such a boring town. Nothing exciting ever happens here. Apparently, we have this guy. He was one of 7 children born to Edna and Claude Rogers. Among his siblings is a brother, Clay. Their father, Claude, was a hydropulp operator at the local Champion Paper Company, which, fun fact, no longer in business. Building is completely, like, in ruins, because obviously it's no longer in existence, just went out of business. But yeah, the factory that is left, which is basically just a building, nothing in it or anything like that, is just trash now. It's been broken into many times, homeless break into it. It's just, you know, it's not that grand. Sometime after expulsion, he got his 14-year-old girlfriend, Deborah Ann Nix, pregnant, which, like I said, he was 16, so not statutory, but still kind of predatory behavior if you ask me. The young couple married. They had another child together in 1981. In 1983, Nix filed for divorce, alleging physical abuse by Rogers. Not surprising. Authorities in Hamilton, Ohio suspected Rogers of fatally stabbing or strangling an elderly man in that city in 1993. Later, Rogers moved away from Ohio, surfacing in California. So he went from, like, one end of the country to the other. Subsequently, in 1995, he was named as a suspect in the murders of 4 women that year in California, Mississippi, Florida, and Louisiana, respectively. After being arrested in Kentucky, because we're back over here now, we're back in the Midwest. On November 13th, 1995, Rogers originally told police that he had committed nearly 70 murders. He recanted his statement, claiming he was only joking and had not actually committed any murders. On January 10th, 1994, police recovered the remains of 71-year-old Mark Peters, a retired electrician and veteran, in a cabin belonging to the family of Glen Rogers in Beattyville, Kentucky. I've also figured out that the yawning thing is an asthma-related thing. I'm so sorry. I'm not trying to look bored or sound bored. It is an asthma thing. Don't know why it does that, but that's where we're at. Before October of 1993, Peters had taken Glen Rogers in and allowed him to share his home in Hamilton. That month, Peters was reported missing along with his car and several valuable personal items, including antiques, guns, and a collection of coins. Rogers had disappeared. His brother Clay reportedly led police to search the family cabin for clues. Peters' remains were found there, bound to a chair and hidden by a pile of furniture. So disrespectful. On September 28, 1995, Sandra Gallagher, a 33-year-old mother of 3, was observed encountering Rogers at McRed's Bar in Van Nuys, California. The next day, Gallagher's badly burned corpse, because fire, always fire, was found in her truck parked near Rogers' Van Nuys apartment. She was found to have been strangled. Authorities allege that after murdering Gallagher, Rogers fled to the southeast, living for a time in Mississippi, Florida, and Louisiana, and in each state he was suspected of the murder of another woman. On June 22, 1999, Rogers was convicted in California of murdering Gallagher. He was already serving time in Florida for the murder of a woman there. On July 16th, California sentenced him to death. According to Kathy Carroll, her sister Linda Price met Rogers at a beer tent at the Mississippi State Fair in fall 1995. Linda repeatedly said, "Ain't he good looking?" Rogers and Price briefly shared an apartment in Jackson, Mississippi. Price was a single mother, 34, with 2 children, then 15 and 18. The last time Carol saw her sister was the night before Halloween of 95. The two planned to have Carol's grandchildren go trick-or-treating at Price's apartment, but Price did not answer her door on Halloween and Rogers appeared to have left. Similar to his other suspected female victims, Price was in her 30s and had red hair. She was found dead in a bathtub in her apartment. On November 5th of 95, Cribbs was last seen leaving the Showton Bar in Jensenton, Florida, with Rogers. A bartender told police that Rogers had bought drinks for Cribbs and her friends. Later, he asked Cribbs for a ride. 2 days later, a member of the cleaning staff at the Tampa 8 Inn discovered Cribbs' body in a bathtub, like that of Price in Mississippi. She had been stabbed in the chest and the butt. A clerk at the motel told authorities that Rogers had arrived at the hotel a few days before the murder. On November 5th, Rogers had paid for an extra night and asked that his room not be cleaned. Because you went away to find the body before you wanted them to find the body, right? The clerk saw Rogers putting belongings into a white Ford Festiva. The next day, Cribbs' wallet was discovered at a rest area in North Florida. Police found that fingerprints lifted from her wallet and the motel room matched those of Rogers. On November 13th, Rogers was arrested in Kentucky while driving Cribbs' car. He claimed that Cribbs had lent it to him and that she was alive when he left Tampa. On July 11, 1997, Rogers was convicted in Florida and sentenced to death for the murder of Tina Marie Cribbs. He was incarcerated in Union Correctional Institution on death row. Andy Giles Sutton was a known acquaintance of Rogers. Her slashed body was found on November 9, 1995, on a punctured waterbed in her apartment in Bossier City, Louisiana, which, if you don't know, back in the 90s, waterbeds were all the rage. But as soon as they were punctured, obviously the water would come out, so they would flood, and it was a mess. My sister had one. Rogers drove north from Louisiana and was arrested in Waco, Kentucky after a 13-mile chase on November 13, 1995. Kentucky State Police Detective Bob Stevens noticed a man driving Cribbs' stolen car. He chased him, followed by a rookie Irvine, Kentucky police officer Charles Cox. Trooper Ed Robinson and other officers set up a roadblock to stop Rogers. Robinson fired a shotgun blast that hit the rear tires, but it didn't stop him. Robinson joined the pursuit. Sergeant Joey Barnes rammed his patrol car into Cribbs' stolen car, which I've seen on TV, and they're brave, and spun Rogers off the highway into a ditch. Stevens, Cox, Robinson, Barnes, and other officers surrounded Rogers and arrested him. A local TV news crew filmed Rogers' chase and arrest on the scene. After being convicted and sentenced to death for Cribbs' murder, Rogers was scheduled to be executed on Valentine's Day of '99 in Florida. He filed various appeals, but these were denied. And honestly, the Casanova killer being executed on Valentine's Day, couldn't have planned that better myself. On April 15th, 2025, Governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, signed a death warrant for Rogers because, obviously it didn't happen in '99. Scheduling his execution for May 15th of 2025. Rogers was the 5th inmate from Florida to have his execution scheduled in 2025 after James Dennis Ford, Edward Thomas James, Michael Anthony Tanzi, and Jeffrey Glen Hutchinson. On May 5th, Rogers appealed to the Florida Supreme Court to stop his execution, arguing that sexual abuse suffered as a child should have been taken into account during the sentencing phase of his trial, as well as concerns over the lethal injection drugs. The court denied Rogers' appeal on May 9th. As a last resort, Rogers' attorneys appealed to the Supreme Court of the United States to stop the impending execution. The Supreme Court rejected the appeal on May 14th, 2025, the eve of Rogers' execution. On May 15th, 2025, 62-year-old Rogers was put to death by lethal injection at the Florida State Prison. The official time of death was 6:16 p.m. His last meal consisted of pizza, chocolate cake, and soda. Rogers was the 16th person in the United States to be executed in 2025 and the 5th offender on Florida's death row to be executed in the state that year. In a final statement, Rogers addressed the family members of his victims and also incumbent U.S. President Donald Trump. I know there's a lot of questions that you need answers to. I promise you in the near future the questions will be answered, and I hope in some way will bring you closure. President Trump, keep making America great. I'm ready to go. And see, this is why we should not... No, sorry. Not doing that. We're not doing that. No politics. Sorry. Jerry Valicella, the sister of Sandra Gallagher, stated that she would finally be able to rest peacefully after the execution of Rogers. She stated that she and her family had waited for nearly 30 years for his death sentence to be carried out, and that his execution would provide a sense of safety for her, knowing that Rogers could harm no one else. Debbie Spikes, the older sister of Linda Price, stated that her family found closure after the execution of Rogers, although stating that it was hard to see. She expressed her anger at Rogers for not showing any remorse for his crimes. Spikes, her husband Ronnie, her sister, and her mother all attended the execution of Rogers. Randy Robertson, the son of Andy Giles Sutton, stated the execution also provided him closure, but stated that his death was too peaceful for his crime. He stated that his death was too, quote, easy, and it looked like he was going to sleep. End quote. A 2012 documentary entitled My Brother the Serial Killer examined Rogers' crimes and included claims that Rogers had killed Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman in '94. According to Rogers' brother Clay, Rogers claimed that before the murders he had met Brown and was, quote, going to take her down, end quote. During a lengthy correspondence that had begun in 2009 between Rogers and criminal profiler Anthony Mioli, Rogers wrote and created paintings about his involvement with the murders. During a prison meeting between the two, Rogers claimed O.J. Simpson hired him to break into Nicole Brown Simpson's house and steal some expensive jewelry. He said that Simpson had told him, quote, you may have to kill the bitch, end quote. In a filmed interview, Glen's brother Clay asserts that his brother confessed his involvement. Rogers' family stated that he had informed them that he had been working for Nicole in '94 and that he had made verbal threats about her to them. Rogers is purported to have given detailed video statements addressing his actions in connection with the murder of Nicole Brown Simpson and other cases to his attorney. Publication is forthcoming. LAPD responded to the documentary as follows: we know who killed Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman. We have no reason to believe that Mr. Rogers was involved. Fred Goldman, father of Ron Goldman, stated the overwhelming evidence at the criminal trial proved that one and only one person murdered Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman. That person is O.J. Simpson and not Glen Rogers. Rogers was the subject of an episode of the FBI Files titled Deadly Stranger. He was also the subject of an episode of Southern Fried Homicide titled Smooth Talking Devil. The Oxygen Channel series that takes a killer episode, The Casanova Killer, focuses on 4 of the murders linked to Rogers and the manhunt leading to his capture. The film, The Murder of Nicole Brown Simpson, purports to tell the story as asserted by Rogers and his family about his involvement with Nicole Brown Simpson. Rogers is portrayed by Nick Stahl, and Mena Savari portrays Nicole Brown Simpson. That's the story of Glen Edward Rogers and his crazy little crimes, because that's what we do here. As always, please don't do anything I wouldn't do. Make good choices and be cautiously kind to others. I'll see you all tomorrow. Please have a wonderful day. Bye, guys.